Welcome to the Lawyerist Podcast, a series of conversations about law practice. Each week, we talk with legal entrepreneurs and innovators about building a successful law practice in today's challenging and constantly changing legal market. And now, here are your hosts.
Hi, I'm Sam Glover.
And I'm Aaron Street, and this is episode 179 of the Lawyerist Podcast, part of the Legal Talk Network. Today we're talking with Jeff Cohen, better known as Chunk from the movie Goonies, about his journey from child actor to entertainment lawyer.
Today's podcast is brought to you by LawPay, Ruby Receptionist, and New Law Business Model. We appreciate their support, and we'll tell you more about them later in the show.
I'm super excited that my favorite childhood movie is going to be featured on the Lawyerist Podcast episode.
He was very patient and let me geek out about it a little bit.
So. Yes, I'm sure he gets too much of it, given that he is actually a successful practicing lawyer in California.
Yes.
But it's fun that we also got to nerd out a little bit on our 80s movies references.
Totally.
So I'm also excited to announce that after a couple of months of a really successful initial launch of our Lawyerist Lab program with lots of great feedback from the first round of participants, that we're opening up a second cohort, which will launch around August 1st. If you're interested in getting our help over the course of the next year and helping your firm structure itself to be successful on our small firm scorecard, the lab is the place for you. You can find out more about the program at lawyerist.com/lab, including applying for an invitation to the program, which you should do soon if you want to get into the August 1st class. That would also give you time as a lab member to register to attend our LabCon event in Minneapolis at the end of August.
Yeah, that'd be very cool. We'd love to see you in there. On our new video series, Lawyerist Lens, this week I'm talking with David Colarusso about building technological solutions to legal problems. You'll be able to watch that episode on YouTube or on the front page of lawyerist.com tomorrow, or you can go there now to see past episodes. So now I've got a brief conversation with Dmitry Leonov from SaneBox, and then we'll jump into my conversation with Jeff Cohen.
Hi, my name is Dmitry Leonov, and I am the head of growth at sanebox.com.
Hi, Dmitry. Thanks for being with us today. We're going to cover the email 3 commandments, which you have graciously made 3 rather than 10. And these are based on best practices that you've seen from lawyers, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think they apply to a lot of busy professionals, but we've seen lawyers being particularly overwhelmed with email. And they are unusually good for lawyers.
So give us commandment number 1.
Commandment number 1 is email is like Tetris. Just like with Tetris, no matter how good you are at the game, more blocks, or in this case, emails, will keep coming in, and they speed up over time. The volume of emails keeps growing. And so if you think you can kind of just win the game by knocking them out, it's not going to happen. You will eventually lose. And so the trick is to change the way you think about it, to apply a different process and use the right tools to help you at least get to inbox 0 or inbox 50 by the end of the day.
Yeah, I see that a lot. People are like, I finally got to inbox 0. I've been working on it for months. But the trick is staying there, not getting there once, because that doesn't get you anywhere. Exactly. All right, what's the second email commandment?
So the second one is probably the most important. It's called don't make email your number 1 priority. For so many of us, we wake up, we look at our phone and start replying to emails, or we get into the office and open up our Outlook or Gmail and start doing email. The problem is that every email is essentially a to-do list that other people can add to for you. And so if doing email is your kind of default number 1 priority, that means other people's priorities are your number 1 priority. And the only way to really overcome this is to
Which may be technically true, but it isn't a good idea from a productivity standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, if you consciously make other people's priorities your priority, that's okay, right? And the problem is if it's kind of this default unconscious state. And so the only real way to get through this is to block time for email. So the system we came up with is called Scan, Block, Ask. So you can scan your emails or your inbox for urgent and important emails, first thing in the morning or whenever you open your email. But again, they have to be urgent and important. And then once you've dealt with those, just close your inbox and get to work on your own to-do list. And at the same time, you need to block. So this is the second part, block time on your calendar for email time. It can be, half an hour, sometime in the morning, sometime in the afternoon. It can be an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon. It doesn't matter. I mean, it could be 3 hours or 4 hours. The point is, you need to be in control of how much time you're spending on email.
I find email is easier to deal with in the afternoon when I'm having that, mid-afternoon slump when I just can't focus on anything else. That is when I try to do email, because then email is the one thing that I actually can be productive on. All right, so what's the last email commandment?
The last email commandment is not all emails are created equal. The problem here is that every single email interface, whether it's Outlook, your phone, or Gmail, every email interface gives the same amount of space on the screen to each email. And so
whether it's spam or
yeah, right? Like they look the same. It's a subject, sender, timestamp. You would think that our brain is better at this, but it's really not, right? It still takes you cognitive cycles to think about whether it's important or not. And those split seconds really add up. The solution to this is that there are multiple kinds of, there are important emails and not important emails, first of all. And then within the important bucket, there's urgent and non-urgent. And those emails need to be dealt with and thought about completely differently. And so this is why we built SaneBox, is to kind of automatically help bucket those different kinds of emails into groups. And we have lots of other tools to help you process them.
Very cool. Thanks, Dimitri. So SaneBox can help you clean up and prioritize your inbox. And for more information about that and for an exclusive 25% coupon, go to sanebox.com/lawyerist. Thanks so much, Dimitri.
Thank you for having me.
Hi, my name is Jeff Cohen. I'm a co-founder of the entertainment law firm Cohen Gardner LLP, based in Beverly Hills. I practice transactional entertainment law. I'm also an author. My first book was The Dealmaker's 10 Commandments, 10 Essential Tools for Business Forged in the Trenches of Hollywood, published by the American Bar Association and available on Amazon.
Hi, Jeff. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Sam.
I feel like we have to do the obligatory "you may know me from,"
right?
Which is...
Yes. Well, I mean, I think you're referring to, Sam, the fact that I am a cultural icon. Yes.
Yes, you are.
Correct. It's a heavy burden to bear. I am the Jerry Garcia of our generation. I was a kid actor, one of those weird creatures, and I was in a film called The Goonies, the classic, one of the big three of American cinema, of course, Citizen Kane, Casablanca, and The Goonies. I think the AFI.
No, I think that's how it goes. Yeah.
And fairly straightforward. I mean, and again, in any order, you know what I mean? It's some are more Goonies guy, some more Casablanca guy. It's fine. So I played the role of Chunk, the iconic role of Chunk, and truffle shuffled my way to victory in the process.
We were actually just wondering if the truffle shuffle was like a thing that we just weren't aware of, or if that was invented for the movie. And it sounds like it was invented for the movie. So
yeah, I think the writer of Goonies, Spielberg and Chris Columbus, the great director and writer, came up with the story, and then Chris Columbus wrote the screenplay, and of course the great Richard Donner directed the film. Who also directed Superman and The Omen and all the Lethal Weapons, and produced X-Men and all kinds of cool stuff. And so the truffle shuffle was referenced in the script, but of course it was my genius, my
you had to make it up on the spot. Yeah,
my remarkable choreography that truly made it resonate as an icon of t-shirts.
I think
it's on many t-shirts and pieces of graffiti around the world. So
let's totally winning. I mean, yeah. I've tried to get my wife to watch The Goonies with me, but because she was not a kid when she first saw it, it totally fell flat. But for those of us who did see it as kids, cultural icon, I think is about right. So there you go.
So I'm guessing like things are not working out between you guys.
We had a rough patch there.
I hope with like some couples counseling, it'll like you can work through it. That's tough, man.
I know.
That's
it was a rough time,
break.
but we worked it out.
Okay, well, great. God bless you. That's cool.
So we know you as an entertainment lawyer. We know who you used to be, but we know you now as an entertainment lawyer. And I'm curious about the time in between. Like, how do you? Were you dead set on a career as an actor, or did you decide, I'm good, I want to go do something else? I mean, I realized there was some time between your role as Chunk and law school. Obviously,
sure.
You did do some growing up in there, but But I'm curious, like, how did that go? Did you know that you wanted to grow up and be a professional, or did you make a stab at acting first?
I will say, I mean, acting, of course, it was my first love as a kid. Like, that's what I wanted to be. There was an old, I grew up in LA in the Valley, San Fernando Valley, and they had this thing called Family Film Festival. On Channel 5, Tom Hatton was the host, and he would play old movies, and they would play Little Rascals shorts, and Three Stooges and fun stuff like that. And I fell in love with kind of these old comics, these old comedic films. And, in the Little Rascals, for those who are not familiar, it was old, 1920s, 1930s, these black and white shorts about this group of kids, that hung out and got in trouble. And the leader was this little fat kid named Spanky. And he was funny and he was fat and he was cool. And I was like, man, because I was a little chubby kid, I was like, man, that's the job. Like, that's what I want. I want to be Spanky. I didn't know that, like, being like a funny, troublemaking fat kid was like a profession. I was like, this is it, man. So, I kind of started going on interviews and doing stuff. And, then you hit puberty. And it's a career ender. Wasn't quite as cute as I was back in the day. And then it's kind of like, hey, what do you want to do? And, I think it's hard because there's that idea that the beauty of first love is the ignorance that it can never end, And so this was my first love and it ended and I was kind of like, shell shocked. But the funniest thing saved me. It was very funny. I went to public school. I went to Taft High, Go Toreadors in Woodland Hills. And I had never grown up playing sports because I was going out on hot dog, auditions for hot dog commercials and stuff,
right.
Which I never got, which bummed me out because fat kids consume more food than anyone. And they would never give the fat kids the food commercials, which I thought was a bummer. Anyways, I played football because that was the one sport I could play where I didn't have to touch a ball. I could just be a lineman because I had no hand-eye coordination. And when I heard the stories and kind of became friends with the kids, from the inner city who went to my school, and I learned what they went through, and I was like, wow, this is real stuff. This is like, there was this one kid I played football with, and he would get on a bus in East LA, 6 a.m. to schlep all the way out to Woodland Hills to get to school at 8. And, school goes from 8 to 3. He played football from, 3:30 to 5:30, take the bus back, wouldn't get home till 7:30. And then he worked a late shift at LAX unloading luggage till whenever and would get up early and do it all again as a kid in high school. And then when I became friends with those dudes, I was like, wow. I'm like, you know what? It's kind of a bummer that, this acting thing didn't pan out, but it gave me some perspective, that like, wow, but life is challenging. So anyways, long story short, focused on my academics. Being 5'4", I knew that a professional life as a professional football player was likely out of the question.
Fair assumption, yeah.
Went to UC Berkeley and, loved it. It was really fun to kind of get out of LA, and I got really involved in politics, and became student body president and kind of figured out, what do I want to do? And I was uncertain, but I knew that a legal education, I wanted a graduate degree, and I knew that a legal education was something I could use if I wanted to get into politics or if I wanted to get back into the business, the entertainment business. And I just thought it was a great graduate education.
So when did you enter law school?
See, I graduated Berkeley in 96, took a year off, and then I went to UCLA Law School from 97 to 2000. And I was very fortunate in that, when I was at UCLA, Richard Donner, who directed me in Goonies, had always been kind of a mentor and a friend to me and let me work as a production assistant for him to kind of learn about different areas of the business. But his former agent was Ron Meyer, who was the, back when Ron was at CAA, who is now running Universal. So Ron got me a job in the television department doing very low-level stuff. And then I kind of fell in love with the business side of entertainment. And I've always loved entertainment. And I was like, oh, well, maybe there's a way that I can contribute to helping, artists make art and entertainment on the legal front. And I think with entertainment specifically, deals are so important, which is why a lot of agents will have a background in law, or producers or studio executives, because kind of knowing the legal underpinnings, knowing how deals are made is a real real advantage. So it was kind of going to UCLA and then, getting involved at Universal Studios made me think like, hey, maybe there's a way for me to get back into the business and contribute, but on a different side in a different way.
So I kind of wanted to ask about that because I'm wondering how much your background as a child actor had to do with you starting an entertainment firm and with the success you've had through that. Because on the one hand, it's easy to make the assumption that, yeah, that was obviously key. He was already in the industry. But I don't know. I'm not sure if that actually is as important as I think it might be.
Well, it's funny, Sam. Being a former child actor, not always a recipe for success, by the way.
Yeah.
Not always the secret concoction of victory in life.
Yeah.
Most former child actors don't become lawyers. They need lawyers. Because
right.
they are in various forms of legal trouble. No. I mean, seriously, for me, it's interesting. I think it's kind of a double-edged sword. Certainly growing up in the business was very important for me because I understood the culture, which, show business has its own very, very weird culture.
Sure.
And then I think there are weird subcultures, like music has its own culture and writers are a certain way and comics are a certain way and agents are a certain way. And they actually speak their own language that, you have to learn how to translate, and studios have their own culture. So I think kind of growing up in the business, made me understand the culture.
And made it easier for you to move around in that world.
Absolutely. And look, I mean, for me specifically, it was really Richard Donner and his wife, Lauren Schuler Donner, who's an amazing, trailblazing producer, a motion picture producer. But, having that friendship was key, to help me get these jobs and help me get relationships. So it certainly was really, really helpful. But on the other hand, there's some kind of a weird stigma of like, oh, you're a kid actor. That's like a weird, you're like a weird thing. But I found that generally my clients, and we'll represent actors and writers and producers and directors and tech companies and production companies. But ultimately, I found that spending a brief time in front of the camera made me have more empathy for my clients, because it's really hard. You're remarkably vulnerable, when you're an artist, whether you're an actor or a director or a writer, you're putting your guts out there for everyone to judge,
right.
And I think I have some empathy for that goes beyond just the academics of it. So double-edged sword, but I think ultimately certainly, gave me a big edge, and I'm really appreciative for it.
Made it easier for you to open some doors. Made it a little harder for some people to take you seriously, potentially.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
I think that's right. And it's funny, actually. So I graduated UCLA in 2000. Very excited to begin my career at Universal Studios, of course. But before I could get my foot in the door, the division that I was in was completely downsized and destroyed. So I was like, wow, and I think as a kid, I loved show business. And then I was kind of blown out of it because I looked different. I couldn't get work. And then I was working at the studio and I was all excited, and then blown out of that because just corporate stuff. And I was like, I love show business so much. I'm like, what is the only way I can't get blown out anymore? Like, there has to be a way where I can't get fired again. So what I wound up doing was in 2002, so pretty soon after I graduated, I started a small law firm. I started Cohen Gardner with a colleague of mine who was at Universal Studios at the time, or prior to the division being downsized. And we were friends, named Jonathan Gardner, and still my partner, a great law partner. And we started our firm in 2002, because as challenging as it was to kind of bootstrap our own little weird, law firm, it was at least we knew, hey, we're betting on ourselves and we can't get fired. And it was rough, man. Like, it's a true story. About the first year of the firm, I actually, I couldn't afford an apartment and the rent for the firm, because we had to have an office in Beverly Hills for people to think
you got to be where your clients are.
So we found the cheapest office in the slums of Beverly Hills that was still, if you looked out the window, you were now in Los Angeles and not in Beverly Hills. But we needed the Beverly Hills address. So for a year, I slept at the office and I had my air mattress, and I worked out at the LA Fitness on La Cienega, and that's where I showered, and kind of hit it for a year until we got on our feet. But ultimately, I've had the firm. It's wild, but it's now 16 years, and it's the best thing I ever could have done. Like, it's always a challenge. I was, certainly had more hair when I started the firm, and I think I was taller. I think I even got shorter than 5'4". I think I'm now like 5'3.5". It's grinding me down. But for me, like having my own business, being able to represent clients that I'm passionate about, and kind of build a team that of like-minded individuals has been great. So a real challenge, but at this point in my life, I'm really pleased that was the call that I made.
We need to take a quick break to hear from our sponsors, and we come back. I want to ask you more about what entertainment law actually is. It's one of those things that I heard lots of people in law school saying, I want to go be an entertainment lawyer, and I'm not sure that we really know what it is. So we'll be right back, and then we'll talk about that.
Did you know that attorneys who accept online payments get paid 39% faster on average than those using traditional payment methods? With LawPay, the only payment solution offered through the ABA Advantage program, you can accept client payments online, via email, or in person. No equipment needed. Visit lawpay.com/lawyerist to sign up and get your first 3 months free. Trust the only payment solution developed for attorneys and recommended by 47 state bars. LawPay.
Support for today's episode comes from Ruby Receptionists, dedicated to helping you grow your practice one happy caller at a time. From their offices in Portland, Oregon, Ruby's remote receptionists work in tandem with their innovative technology to answer your calls live with your custom greeting, transfer calls through to you when and where you want, collect new client intake and messages, make follow-up calls, and more. Delighting your callers in English and Spanish just like an in-house receptionist at a fraction of the cost. Ruby integrates with Clio, Rocket Matter, and Lexicata, as well as the contacts and calendar on your cell phone to easily integrate into your workflow. Ruby can host your local phone number or provide you with one, giving you the opportunity to make dual use of your phone. Call clients using your office or personal number as you please via the Ruby mobile app. For over 15 years, thousands of attorneys have been turning rings into relationships with Ruby receptionists. To learn more, call 844-715-7829 or visit callruby.com/lawyerist2018.
Alexis Neely has been training lawyers on the new law business model she created to build her $1 million law practice for more than 10 years. Over that time, she saw that some lawyers were hugely and immediately successful with it, and others spun their wheels, never getting anywhere. Just recently, she decided to figure out what made the difference. After reviewing all of her clients' successes and failures, as well as her own, she identified 5 shifts that were the common denominator among all the lawyers who today have high 6- and 7-figure law practices they love. To learn what she discovered and apply it to your life and law practice, go to newlawbusinessmodel.com/lawyerist.
Hey, one more thing before we get back to the conversation. If you haven't already taken the small firm scorecard and you are a solo or small firm lawyer, do it now at go.lawyerist.com/scorecard. Look, you listen to this podcast, so you must know the practice of law is changing in important ways. And sooner or later, you are going to feel the effects of those changes in your practice if you aren't feeling them already. So, what's your plan? If you are like most of the lawyers we've met over the years, even if you understand the trends shaping the past, present, and future of law practice, you probably don't have a plan. You may not even be sure where to start. So that's why we put together the Small Firm Scorecard, to help lawyers understand what they need to do to position their firm to be successful in the future. It's a free self-assessment. 50 questions for small firms, 40 for solos. The questions cover your goals, strategy, systems, marketing, client service model, finances, and people and staffing. It only takes about 10 minutes, and at the end, you'll know exactly what you need to work on based on your own assessment of how you're doing on each item. Like I said, it's free, it takes about 10 minutes, and you'll end up with a to-do list to prepare your firm for the future. So take it now at go.lawyerist.com/scorecard. Okay, we're back. So, Jeff, if you had to explain entertainment law to a new lawyer or a law student who thinks they want to go into it, how would you describe it?
First, I would say turn back. There are easier ways to make money, man or lady. Mm-hmm. No, I'm just kidding. I love it. So entertainment law encompasses a lot of different areas, right? Like a person can say they're an entertainment lawyer and it can mean all types of different things. You can be a litigator who focuses maybe on intellectual property. Like there's this common claim of like, hey, I went in and pitched you guys this idea for a movie and then you didn't buy it from me, but you did it with somebody else and you stole it. So, maybe you're a litigator and you focus on kind of, intellectual property issues. That could be one type of entertainment law. The type of entertainment law that I'm involved in is transactional. So what we do, basically, we represent companies and individuals in negotiating their deals regarding entertainment transactions. So if you're a director and you are going to co-write a script and, hopefully direct that film for a studio, we would represent the director, negotiate their deal with the studio. If you're an actor and you're, going to test to get cast in a television series, we would negotiate your deal and kind of, hopefully renegotiate your deal in success for that show. There's also
so is it a bit like being an agent then?
The three main reps. The three main reps are managers, agents, and lawyers. And there are other representatives that are very important as well, such as publicists and business managers. But for actually making the deals in the first place, it's agent, managers, and lawyers. And everyone's role can be somewhat fluid, but agents' kind of primary role is sales. So the agent is the one who actually gets the client in the door, gets the client the opportunities. It's kind of the sales function. And then sometimes at that point, they'll just hand over the deals to us, to me, or sometimes they'll negotiate the high level points, kind of, some of the macro points and then hand it over, or we'll negotiate the whole thing as a team. Managers will focus more on producing for their client potentially and also developing materials and kind of, big strategic issues for their client. The secret power of the manager is they can be a producer. And if you're a client and you have a television show or a feature, having a manager who really understands your, voice and can be an advocate for you in the room can be very helpful. So agents can sell, managers can produce. Entertainment lawyers, our primary function is the deal. Although we will plug in clients with projects or, I got this financier and I think this is a good picture. I want to, help finance it. Things like that certainly happen. And the roles, are fluid, but our primary role is to kind of be the expert on the deal, be a bodyguard for the client, make sure nobody's getting cute with any sort of accounting or profit participations, things like that, and be a diplomat when appropriate and be a hard ass when appropriate.
That makes a lot of sense. Negotiation is what you do, and you wrote a book all about it. I'm curious because I know a few lawyers who've written books.
Yeah.
It seems like it comes up every once in a while as a marketing tool or something. And I'm curious about why you decided to write it and who you were writing it for.
Sure. So the American Bar Association had approached me about doing a book specifically about entertainment law. I'm a big fan of business books and kind of political philosophy and weird stuff like that. So I wanted to kind of open it up. And I was like, well, hey, what if I wrote a book that kind of utilizes my experiences in the entertainment industry, kind of growing up in it, and as an entertainment lawyer, but kind of make it more general about kind of macro. It's the 10 Commandments, Dealmaker's 10 Commandments. So it's kind of like my 10 big picture ideas of like, okay, when I'm negotiating a deal, this is kind of the intellectual infrastructure of that. When I'm managing my time, this is like kind of the big thing I'm thinking about. When I'm engaging in combat, what are the pitfalls? When you have a crisis, what is the best way to kind of deal with the crisis? And then ultimately, like, how can you do this and kind of engage in the life of combat that lawyers lead, right? Because no matter what kind of lawyer you are, you're usually engaging in some form of combat. Yeah. And combat can have post-traumatic stress, right? So like, how do you kind of engage in a life of combat without losing your soul, without losing your spirit, So
you were writing it for lawyers?
It was for business people generally. Okay. But I think lawyers would certainly get a lot out of it.
Yeah. Was your idea that this would help you get business, or was it more of something you were just hoping to put some value out into the world?
Sure. I mean, I'd say it's a combo, like, of course, when you write a book for the bar, for the ABA, it's like, hey, it's cool. It shows that you're an expert in the space. So certainly I think there's a positive marketing element to it, and it lets people know, hey, the American Bar Association respects your take on this. So you're real. So anything that can kind of help show you as an expert in your field, I think is great. So as a marketing thing, it's helpful. But my take with it was funny, actually. The book that really kind of changed my life, and this is weird, when I got to college, and you take Intro to Poli-Sci, I read Machiavelli's The Prince. For me, that book was kind of a game changer because even though it's very hard-edged, what he was saying really kind of spoke to my experience of, the idea that it's kind of better to be feared than loved, because people fear you because they have to, and they love you because they want to. Certainly not in a personal context. I mean,
it's not about how to make friends.
Precisely. So certainly using that advice in a personal context would have disastrous results. But as an entrepreneur, as a business person, as a lawyer, as a professional, trying to build something that is hard to be taken away from you, that to kind of build your fort, and a moat around it so you can kind of build your business. I was like, wow, yes, that's right. That's very dark, but that comported with kind of what I had seen. So I kind of patterned my book after that. I was like, wow, like he just kind of came with it. There was no fluff. He was like, hey, this is my take on it. He wasn't, pandering. He was like, hey, this is how I view the world, and it's completely honest. And of course, the book was banned by the Catholic Church, and
right.
It didn't really work out for Machiavelli that well in his life. But I love that idea of someone just being very honest. And I think people recognize honesty immediately. So kind of my goal was hey, it's a great marketing tool. Intellectually, it's an interesting exercise. And then I wanted to put something in the world that was like, hey, honest, that was like, hey, I've been able to kind of build a business, kind of have some success in this space as a lawyer and as a business person and kind of advising my clients. How can I take that information that I learned the hard way, sleeping on my air mattress, showering at the LA Fitness. How can I kind of the knocks that I learned the hard way, can I help enlighten other people and hopefully make their journey a little bit easier? So that was kind of, I guess, the big idea.
So speaking of honesty, how has it worked out as a marketing tool?
I think great. It's great. It's interesting. There's kind of one element, which is just, it's fun. I tell you, one of the funnest things I ever did, because there's a book on tape of this too, and I actually recorded the thing. So I'm a big fan of books on tape. I listen to tons of books on tape. So I was so excited that I get to go into the studio and read my book on tape. I was like, wow, that's cool. And it's cool to have a book, oh, wow, there's a book and there's my name on it. And it's, and you can go to Amazon and it's cool. Yeah. So there's I think there's a personal satisfaction and knowing hey, even if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, my ideas, some of my ideas have kind of been inserted into the zeitgeist, inserted into culture. So that's exciting. And as a marketing tool, I think it's cool. Now, I don't know. I mean, from a pure marketing perspective, I think the energy that it takes to write a book is so much greater than the energy that it takes to write an article. I don't know if it's worth it.
Well, I mean, I'm curious. Are you going to write another book?
It's a good question. I've been kind of thinking of some other ideas about maybe kind of a follow-up book or kind of a different angle or some different stuff. But it's funny. I really feel like I kind of left it all on the field. I really wanted to. I don't want to make this book a teaser for a second book. I was like, hey, man, I just want to come with it. This is in building my business and advising these clients. What did I learn and how do I do it? So I think I kind of left it all in the field. I mean, I wouldn't put it out of the realm of possibility, but man, and as I'm sure you and all your listeners know, I mean, being a lawyer is pretty time consuming.
Right. Yeah.
And I spent about a year writing this book, and wow, I mean, it is an intellectual marathon where writing an article is more of a sprint. This is a marathon. You just got to go, go, go. So I don't know if I have it in me, but I mean, it could always happen, I suppose.
So do you use the book as a thank you gift or a welcome to the firm gift, or is that not on the plan for you? Well,
it's funny when there are 3 books that all attorneys who start at the firm have to read, and shockingly, one of them is the Don't Make the Thank You Commandment, but I do give them a copy. I don't make the attorney buy it. That would be bad form. But the 3 books that we make everybody read are my book, The Genius Dealmaker's 10 Commandments, of course. There's a book called What Makes Sammy Run, by Bud Schulberg, which is a fictional take on kind of the entertainment industry and kind of the mania of it. But even though it's fiction, I think there's a lot of really interesting lessons in it. And the 3rd book is a great book, which is really fun and just amazing stories and remarkably honest about entertainment. And it's by the late, great Bernie Brillstein, who's a great manager and producer who managed all the SNL people and Lorne Michaels and, the Blues Brothers and, Gilda Radner and, produced The Sopranos and all kinds of amazing stuff. And the book is called You're No One in Hollywood Till Someone Wants You Dead. So it's kind of his life story about kind of building his company and his life. So those are the 3 books that we make everybody read.
That's interesting. I wonder wonder if many other firms have kind of a, here are the books you need to read in order to work here. What else do you do to bring new lawyers on board like that? Or is it the book assignment and then you get to go ahead? How do you get other new lawyers ready to work for the firm and bring them into the culture and get them ready to go?
I mean, it's a fairly exhaustive interview process just because it's such a weird, I think entertainment has such a weird culture. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's like, hey, do you have experience in the business? Like, kind of do you have relationships? You know, usually when someone works for us, they'll have worked at like either an agency before or a studio or perhaps another law firm. So it's kind of all over the map. It's just, you know, it's someone who can do the work and also kind of gets entertainment, which again is its own. I think every business has its own weird culture, but entertainment does certainly as well.
Yeah. All right. So by way of wrapping up, one last question about Goonies. What's your favorite scene?
Oh man, they're all so good, Sam. They're all so good. Well, you know, it's funny. What's my favorite? I think it's probably, there's one scene in Goonies where like they're gonna my character Chunk, they're like the bad guys are gonna put my hand in the blender if I don't talk and tell them where the other kids are. So it's like this funny thing where they're like interrogating me and I'm like crying my eyes out. And
I want to play the violin.
Yeah, exactly. You've seen the film. You've seen the film. So,
a lot of times.
You know, and I kind of just like do this whole crazy rant. So I think for me, if there's one scene that's like, wow, that's my favorite scene, I always get a kick out of watching that.
Awesome. Well, Jeff, thanks so much for being with us today. For listeners, the link to Jeff's book will be in the show notes, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for having me.
Make sure to catch next week's episode of the Lawyerist Podcast by subscribing to the show in your favorite podcast app. And please leave a rating to help other people find our show. You can find the notes for today's episode on lawyerist.com/podcast.
The Lawyerist Podcast is produced with help from Lindsay Calhoun and edited by Paul Fisher. The views expressed by the participants are their own and are not endorsed by Legal Talk Network. Nothing said in this podcast is legal advice for you.